Hi, you. It's me, Nicole for Next Star, and this is the Next Star podcast. So, I have decided to make a part two of why I no longer identify as being spiritual. I got a lot of feedback and messages and thank yous um, for my last podcast, and a lot of questions as well, which I wanted to dive a little bit deeper in. And, as the summation of spirituality being a label and what can feel like a box, being the premise of the evolution that I'm experiencing, because it's not that I am rejecting or saying anything about the path I've been on. The contrary, actually, because there's a lot of people, quite often that follow different paths, and quite often there is people that either return or turn to Christianity and they bastardize and reject the bridges that have got them there, and whether that be beliefs that they had that they now reject. And I certainly am not one of those people. So I absolutely still meditate and believe that meditation is an incredible practice for anyone and everyone. And, at its core, it is a turning inward. And, you know, meditation is, anything and everything. And there are so many different kind of pathways to do that, and structured meditation to do that. And, there is meditation that is non-quiet, and there's meditation that is silence, and all of these things. And so it's a very, very, very big umbrella. And for me, ultimately, I feel like life is meditation, and it really is about being present and being in, the now, and being in awareness and all of these things. And it doesn't have to be sitting on your butt with your back straight and your eyes closed. I do that, but I also feel like so many things that I do and how I walk through life is quite in a meditative state. So, I also have spent so many years singing mantras and using mantras for various things, and quite often they just swirl around in me without me kind of intentionally doing it. And I feel like that'll always be part of my life, and part of my experience. And, several weeks back, I went and spent 5 hours singing Om Namah Shivaya mantras, and it was a glorious experience. And, I've spent thousands of hours singing Om Namah Shivaya and chanting Om Namah Shivaya, and it just was incredible. And, there is certainly never any rejection of any part of my path or my journey. It's more of a complete inclusivity and beyond. And that's kind of the message that I guess, it's, I feel so much more than spiritual. I just feel like fully experiencing the nature of being, and, as a soul having a human experience. For me, spirituality is absolutely part of that, but it's not just that. And, I identify deeply as a mother, but I'm not just that. And I have deep reverence and belief in so many organized religions and not just one. And I find, the reality is that they're all pretty much saying the same thing in a different flavor, in different language, using different parables and different characters. And ultimately, it's all about awakening to the realization of the nature of being. And it just, comes in a myriad of flavors. And I also pray, and I feel like, there's no one way to do that either. And there's been so many different times in my life where I prayed to, you know, my flavor of God consciousness at that time and in that moment. And again, I feel like it's just multiple names for the same thing, which ultimately is oneness consciousness, which we are not separate from, but a part of. And just as I have many, many names, I believe that that is no different to all the names of what many people call their representation of consciousness, God, etc. And I have the deepest reverence for all organized religion because I believe at the core they are just a guidance system for those that are in the human experience and are on their own specific journey of awakening. And my reverence for every step of my path is steeped in extreme gratitude. And I would never, ever reject any of it, ever. It just feels like it's now uncontained and beyond labels and beyond description, essentially, and someone said to me, will you ever go back to India? And I'm like, oh my God, I absolutely will. Like I have this great seed in me that I want to do a motorcycle ride through the Himalayas and across to Rajasthan to ride an Indian motorcycle in a sari on a massive journey. India is just a whole experience that, you don't have to be blocked into Hinduism to appreciate or understand. It is somewhere that I feel completely at home. I have pure resonance for and has been a profound part of my journey. And, we all have those feelings at different places that we feel like a deep resonance for. And India is a place that takes my breath away. And, there's so many people who find it very difficult. There's a lot of polarity in your experience there. There is an extreme, extraordinary amount of wealth and an extreme, extraordinary amount of poverty and a way of living that is very, 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 very contrasting to Western life. And a lot of people get thrown profoundly out of their comfort zone there and find it very, very difficult. And for me, I thrive in such situations. I adore difference, and I find that, all parts of me are stirred up in unfamiliar lands, and I just go off the charts in my curiosity and dive in. I very rarely kind of do touristy things. I don't do that. Like, I go somewhere and I just kind of settle in and potter around and follow the pull to go different pieces. I love living amongst it, and it's kind of how I do things. So yeah, there's a lot of places that are seeds in me that feel like they call me. Like, I have this great calling to go to Jordan and Turkey, um, to go back to Italy, and I really need to go and spend some time in France and just plop myself down for 6 weeks or something and just potter around and live in a Parisian vibe and wander around and eat, and yeah. So, it's and spend time in cathedrals, and I've always had this great pull to sacred sites. And when I was younger, the proximity I had was to churches. And although I wasn't brought up in a Christian or religious family by any means whatsoever, I found myself kind of spending time in churches. And again, like, there was always this resonance and this stirring inside me that didn't have any labels and didn't have any meaning other than a feeling of home inside me, and not because I was there. Like, it just brought me back inward, and the inwardness was the wholeness of oneness. And I spent a lot of my life in solitude. Um, you know, I'm one of those extrovert introvert types where I have spent many years alone, and I dine by myself and have since I was in my teens. Um, I've spent hundreds of hours in movie cinemas by myself. I, you know, have spent more time traveling by myself and wandering around lands by myself. And I don't know, it never seemed strange to me. And I have no problem, being in crowds or standing in front of thousands of people and talking either. It's just, I realized yesterday when I was pottering around my house, I was like, I do spend a lot of time by myself because I was pondering about going out because I hadn't left my house for a few days, and where would I go? What would I do? Where do you meet up with people? And I just observed that thought, and I was like, there was a time in my 20s where I used to go seeking connection, and it didn't last too long. Yeah, it's fascinating. Anyway, got off on a little tangent then. Essentially, I've come to realize in all my journey and all of the labels that I have had over time and kind of being is all about following the energy and the lived experience and spending so much time and teaching the awakened realization state has really kind of integrated my entire life. And these last couple of months being in this container of the awakened realization state and breaking it down and teaching it has really, been such a profound personal piece. And to live as pure consciousness where there is no duality and labels or separation the majority of the time is very hard to articulate. And, it could be called freedom or liberation or things like this. But again, trying to label something just seems unnecessary. I don't know. It's funny right now trying to find language to articulate my life. And so that's perhaps where I will complete. Thank you so much for listening. I am incredibly grateful and I love receiving messages and having conversations with people that feel the pull to do so from listening to my podcast. It's really precious to me to have these conversations, and I appreciate it so very deeply. Thank you. All right. Of course, my website is www.nickstar.com, NIKSTARR. Blessings. Oh, my love. Mwah.